Greetings and welcome to Parsing John. Today we get to compare our Greek and Latin texts from verses 22 all the way through, if I can find it, verse 25. There's an extraneous thing on there. Okay, so what we're normally looking for in these videos, which probably explained in the last one, is we want to see how well the Latin text matches up with the Greek text. Since the Greek is the older and the, frankly, original form of the text, we want to see that the Latin is being faithful to that text and accurately saying exactly what the Greek says, or as close as Latin can get. Now, since they are two different languages, there are of course going to be some differences in how things are said. Greek may use one construction to say something, and Latin will use a different construction. One thing that we don't care about, at least most of the time, is word order. Since these are both inflected languages, word order matters not a bit. Let's get started. They said, therefore, to him, "Who are you?" I'll stop there. They said, therefore, to him, "Who are you?" So we got a perfect tense verb there and an aorist tense verb here. Perfect and the aorist are equivalent tenses between these two languages, so that's good. Ergo un, good. Dative singular indirect object, dative singular indirect object. Chris and tis, they are equivalents. A and S, perfect match. This is fantastic so far. I know. 5 words in, amazing. Let's move on. In order that we may give an answer to those having sent us. In order that we may give response to those who sent us. Okay. Hina and ut, they are equivalents. Domen is first person plural aorist. It's aorist active subjunctive. And the demos is first person plural present active subjunctive. So here we have a variant between the two. Aorist implies a single action even in the subjunctive, whereas present implies continued action. So when this is in the Greek, we may give one answer to them, but in the Latin here we may give an answer to them and keep giving them an answer for this, which technically from the Latin beforehand we had the imperfect verb here. So this and this, these two go together. They are, within the Latin text, internally coherent. It makes sense for us to have a present here, continuing action, when the asking verb back here was a imperfect and therefore also continuing action. So it is internally coherent amongst Latin, but it does not match up to Greek, which is what matters more. So that's a slight problem there, but not huge. Dative. We've got a relative clause here. In Greek, we don't have relative verb, but not relative verb, a relative pronoun or adjective, but that doesn't change the text up. Actually, it makes the Latin here is clarifying something a little bit more. And this, as far as I'm aware, is it's actually something that Latin can do, where you just throw an article out there and it acts as a relative clause with a participle. So Latin Latin can do that. It's just for some reason Jerome didn't do it here. So this, though, is still an equivalent of a participle. You can use either a participle or a relative clause, where I think English uses a lot of relative clauses. Greek uses mostly participles, in Latin. Yeah, Latin also will use participles more often than English will. All right, so we've got perfect active indicative participle, perfect indicative verb, that is, with qui, and we've got aorist active participle. These two are equivalent. Good, both in tense. Direct object. Let us move on. What do you say about yourself? What do you say about you yourself? Okay. What quid, t and quid, that is, they match. Leges, present active. Dikis, present active. Good. De and peri, the way that they are being used here, they are equivalent. So that's good. Se autu and te ipso are equivalent words. We got se and te and autu ipso. So those are good. Still matching. He said, "I am voice of crying in the wilderness." He says, or he said, "I voice of crying in desert." Efe is far more particular a word in Greek than ite is in Latin. We originally had some confusion over, is it present tense or is it perfect tense? And you can't tell with this verb at all. It's very, very irregular. But efe is in perfect tense. So these two, no matter how you look at it, do not match. Present tense gives us a wrong time in relation to this clause over here. The way that works is we have a sequence of tenses. If you have in a main clause a main verb, and whatever tense that is sets the tense for the whole rest of the thing that's going on. The subordinate clause, whatever tense is in there, is in relation to the main verb. So if the main verb is present and the subordinate clause has a present tense, then they are contemporaneous. They happen at the same time. But if the main verb is present and the subordinate clause is a past tense, then it tells us that it happened before the main clause in relation of time. This is usually used for participles and infinitives, but it can also apply here. So we have present tense, but we have past action. And here we have present active participle and present active participle. So those two match, but this is implying these two together that it's happened at a more recent date than efe and boontos are implying here. Okay, voice and voice, good. And the wilderness and the desert and wilderness, they're equivalent. Make sure everything is still in the screen. But still visible. Make straight the road of Lord, just as Isaiah the prophet said. I think I've read that a different way every time I've come across it. Make straight the way of Lord, just as Isaiah prophet said. Dirigete and euthunate, second person plural aorist active imperative, second person plural active present active imperative. And here, yet again, we've got a tense issue. With imperatives, what tense you use is very, very important. If you use a present tense imperative, then what you have here, or at least the way this would work in Greek, is if you use a present tense imperative, then it's telling you, go do this and keep doing it. If you use an aorist imperative, then it's go do this once and you're done. Now, I said this was a problem, and brain had to cogitate on this for a while. Actually, this doesn't pose an issue. In Latin, there are really only two tenses that have imperatives, and you rarely ever see the second type of imperative. The present imperative is basically it. There are occasionally future imperatives. In Greek, there is a far wider variety of imperatives you can use, as I said, for continued action versus single action. So aorist implies finished action. Present doesn't imply anything at all because there's only the one option. So not actually an issue there. Let's move on. Road, road, on Lord of Lord. Good, good. Just as kathos sikut, said, aorist, perfect, good. Isaiah the prophet, Isaiah the prophet. Good match so far. Too far. There we go. And where is this visible to? Good, to that spot. And they were having been sent out from the Pharisees. Where is it? New and who had been sent. They were from Pharisees. So this is, in both languages, a really complex clause. Not going to be easy to figure out. Okay. Okay. And having been sent out, this is a perfect middle passive participle. Most likely, of course, passive, and in the Latin. And who had been sent out. We've got a relative clause here, again, where the Greek only has a participle, so that's not an issue. As we said before, we've got perfect passive participle with a form of sum in the pluperfect tense, which is something that, I think I may have said this, I've never seen this set up before, but it works. Had been sent and having been sent. So the tenses there are not quite the same, but honestly, since I've never seen anything like this before, I don't know exactly how this relates to Greek at all. on the face of it, it's just this is a little bit further back in time than this one is, and that's not too huge of a deal. Let's move on. They were, and they were, good. From the Pharisees, both of these should be ablatives of, not ablatives, well, ablative here, but genitive here of origin. So they match up. That is good. And let's see, lowest visible is, oh, there's visible, good. Where were we? And they asked him, and they said to him. And they asked him, and they said to him. We have got aorist active, and we have perfect active, good. Aorist, and another perfect. So this clause matches up perfectly, that's good. What therefore, sorry, starting with the Latin this time apparently. What therefore do you baptize? Why therefore do you baptize? Now, we do have disagreement between these two texts, present and present, so that's good. But quid and t, while they were equivalents beforehand, it all depended on how they were being used in the language. Earlier, when we had t and quid across the languages, it was they were asking for a thing, not for an explanation, whereas here they're asking for an explanation and not for something else. But in Latin, it's still the same construction. Now, quid can be used to mean why, but it's, to my knowledge, not very common and definitely not good form. So technically, not a major issue here, but there is a word in Latin which could have been used, and I don't know why Jerome wouldn't have used it, except perhaps just slight error on his part reading through this as he went. People make it all the time. So I'm not going to count this against them, but cur would have been the better word here. Okay. If you are not the Christ, and not Elijah, and not barely visible, the prophet. If you not are Christ, and not Elijah, and not prophet. So we have one verb in here, and one verb, where did it go? In here. All the rest of the parts of this sentence are present in both languages. So on the whole, this passage is a pretty good job. We've got, again, tense issues. Where was that? Ah, yes. Present tense, when we should have had a perfect tense in here, versus that. The imperatives aren't an issue. This one right here, apostalmenoi, and where did it go? Qui misi fuerant. To my knowledge, not a big issue there. Just a very strange way of doing it in Latin. So this text, just like the last one, is pretty good, though I think the last one was even better. I don't really have any more to say about this one. Thank you for watching, and I hope you join me for the final video where we get to compare the last two clauses, not last two clauses, the last two chunks of this text to each other. And we're finally done with this entire section, and we can move on to the next one in the second half of chapter 1. Again, thank you for joining me. Farewell.